Hey pilots, welcome back to Hawken Items and Internals. Last time we finished off the B classes with the Bruiser mech, and this time we're looking at the C class loadouts. We'll start with the Bruiser's fat cousin, the Rocketeer, dubbed the Rocketard by Amid. This is one of the mechs I rarely use. Mostly just on Ultra-Violent Wednesdays for Michael Bay Bunker Siege, where we only play Rocketeers, Incinerators and Grenadiers for the most cinematic explosion experience. Since we play that with regular repairing and radar disabled, I have 3 orbs and an advanced repair kit in here. Otherwise, I would probably recommend something else, like getting an air compressor, and a few more turrets and radar scramblers or holograms or whatever you desire for your Rocketeer, since it's supposed to be focused on supporting your team with all the annoyance it can come up with. And use either Seeker or Heat Cannon. EOC is really just pretty bad on this mech. Moving on to the father of all C-class mechs, and, well, one of my favorites too, the Brawler. Now, again, I have 2 versions of this mech, because its primary weapons require a bit of a different setup. The default weapon is the flak cannon, which makes the Brawler practically an oversized scout, and that's also how I play it. I boost, I dodge, and I shield duel. That's why I have deflectors and a fuel converter in this build. Still, the emphasis lies on the Brawler's large health pool, and that's where the armor fuser, the advanced armor fuser, starts to shine. Because since the amount of armor it repairs is percentage based, this internal is pretty useless on A classes, to be honest, but on C classes it's almost as effective as the advanced reconstructor for small mechs. With Brawlers having 800 armor points, you get 160 points for each kill, at least in theory, and you don't even have to be out of combat for that, which is a big plus. Contrary to the flak cannon, the Brawler's other weapons, the Hawkens and the Vulcan, both provide sustained fire, which means I don't really want to boost all that much to not interrupt my damage output. Instead I walk. So I switched out the deflectors for an evasive device. But since I don't really need a lot of fuel either, I put in at least the basic deflectors to benefit from the damage reduction while dodging. And since shields do not really hold an advantage for this Brawler, and I'd rather have them disappear, there's an EMP. My Incinerator and Vanguard mech have almost the same loadout. The obvious advanced armor fuser with a failsafe. I use that because the splash radius of the SAR launcher is enormous, and because the Vanguard often has to get very close and facehug people for the mini flak cannon to deal the most damage. Since their enemies tend to run from these mechs a lot, I have to boost in order to finish them off, but both of these mechs have a rather small fuel tank, so the basic fuel converter is a nice touch too. The Incinerator has an EMP for when I accidentally overheat in engagement, and the Vanguard has a shield, which I sometimes deploy when I want to activate turret mode mid-combat and don't want to die during the transformation. Still, repair charges are the best friend of all heavy mechs. Except for maybe the Rocketeer, because it's flying a lot, but even there. That doesn't change with the Grenadier either, even though it's slightly different in terms of weapons. The Grenadier has one of the most powerful abilities in game, buffing the damage output and splash radius of its weapons. Now this could be a reason to install a failsafe too, but I rather have a replenisher instead to just use it as much as possible. and because I don't want to get rid of the advanced armor fuser. And since the Grenadier is excellent on the Uptown map, it gets a blockade too. Finally, the G2 Raider is a very unique mech, and so is its internal setup. It's all about the ability, which increases walk speed by a tremendous amount, but drains your fuel tank, similar to the Infiltrator's ability. Basically, the idea is to stick to your buddies and try not to lose too much health until you can snatch off a kill to activate the Power Surger. This internal gives you a 25% boost to walk speed for 10 seconds. You instantly pop the ability and rush the nearest target. You are now already running faster than anything else in the game, and because you look like an angry bull on fire, really, everybody will start attacking you. I can guarantee that, which is more or less what you want. Because once you drop below 50% health or lower, the evasive device kicks in to give you even more of a boost, which is permanent and still active even after the power surge has worn off. While the fuel converter keeps your ability active as long as you get shot. Once it ended, you have either killed everybody or deployed a shield before dying, hopefully. Because even if you're slow, you have an insane burst potential, which is always a reason to pack shields. Yeah, that was the last mech, and... oh, alright, things I haven't mentioned yet. The composite armor. The composite armor gives you 15% armor reduction after every respawn, until you get a kill or 2 assists. That's actually pretty powerful. So powerful that TPG, I think, bans it during contests. But anyway, I don't really like the idea of rewarding deaths, since that more or less promotes the Rambo playstyle that too many players have anyway. It's kind of viable in Siege and Missile Assault when you just charge a missile silo or the AA repeatedly and die all the time. Yeah, but I'm not really using it that much. The shock coil prevents you from taking fall damage. Now, I used this in the past, but nowadays I tend to have enough situational awareness to make sure I'm not out of fuel before jumping from a cliff. The only viable use for this item really would be on a Predator, to prevent Stalker mode from breaking, since you don't want to show up on radar through hovering. Regardless, I have found other internals to be simply more useful in the long run, even on the Predator. Items, the HE charge. The HE charge is very similar to the detonator, but it deals a bit more damage. It deals 65 points of damage instead of 60. On the downside though, it doesn't fly in a straight line and doesn't explode on contact with walls or the ground, so you have to aim a bit more carefully. Turrets. There are 2 kinds of turrets too. I didn't really mention that. The MG turret has sustained fire at close range, and the rocket turret is slow firing but has more range to it. Well, both are pretty useful, but are mostly ignored in favor of other more useful items, since they are so easy to destroy. I mean, you only have to boost over a turret before it starts firing, and it's basically for naught. Holograms. Holograms are pretty much the same deal. Fun to use, but not as helpful as shields or EMPs or repair charges. Some snipers who are very stationary use holograms effectively, because if they stand still between 3 holograms, they're barely distinguishable. This only really works against unexperienced players though, because anyone who knows what to look for will just ignore holograms without even test shooting them. Scanners, again, don't use them. If orb lording is frowned upon, then using a scanner is like the mother of all sins. Really, don't use them, please. The majority of the community agrees that they should, they should at least be nerfed, if not removed from the game entirely. This is because positioning is so extremely important in this game, and the challenging part in a duel is the mind game of trying to predict from behind which corner the enemy will pop out next. And in that sense, using a scanner can almost be considered cheating. Because not only you, but also your entire team will know where the enemy team moves without them even being aware of that. If they didn't hear the low humming noise. Yeah. The heat mine. The heat mine creates an area of denial in which enemy mechs, or every mech, build up heat quickly. This is probably the most useless of all items, since the area is visible from afar, from very far away, since it's like glowing red, and thus easy to avoid. And even if you don't avoid it, you can still safely run through that area without overheating, because the effect's pretty weak. The only mech that can kind of profit from this item is the incinerator. If you're using the baby bear primary and have trouble building up enough heat to use the big Sara mode. But nobody is ever using the baby bear primary. Lastly, the EMP's odd cousin, the ISM disruptor. You fire it in the same way, it's also that kind of Beyblade-ish looking thing, but instead of shutting down weapon systems, it only blurs the enemy's vision. Well, while receiving an ISM to the face admittedly is pretty nasty, it's not as bad as an EMP. Because you can still fire, and even with the visual distortion going on, you can still make out roughly where your enemy is. So I'd always choose an EMP over the ISM. Yeah, anyway, that was my take on items and internals. It was pretty long. I didn't really intend that, but yeah, there you go. Note that these setups I showed you are temporary. I'm changing them all the time. Probably by the time you're watching this video, I will change. I will have changed them again. So yeah, the same is what you should do. Keep experimenting. Keep experimenting with different combinations to find what suits your playstyle best. That's the best advice I have. As always, feel free to add me in game. And if you liked this video, I would appreciate you leaving a comment down below. Thanks for watching, and see you on the battlefield.